Hello and welcome back. Today we have with us Dr. Ravi Rajaratnam. He is the author of Hardwiring versus Rewiring, a book that revealed itself as he was embarking to write a series of children's books and to aid and accelerate the early childhood development skills, which then evolved into its current state that highlights the connection to the 21st century skills. Welcome, Dr. Ravi.
Lisa, thank you so much for having me.
You are most welcome. Now, you've written this amazing book, and you talk about 21st century skills. So first of all, tell me how you mentioned a little, well, I mentioned a little bit how the book was born, but go back and give us a little more history so that people understand what the importance of this book.
Sure. So I kind of stumbled into this book. What do I mean by that? I've been in corporate America for 30 years, primarily as a trusted advisor, a coach, and a mentor. And as I was working with all these different leaders to help them become their best version and have transformative change across the organization, I always saw three different things that were constantly holding them back from being their best versions. And without fail, it's either all three or one of the three. It was trauma, early childhood development, and their belief system. And I was curious about that. Like, that's interesting. Excuse me. So I had no idea what uh, early childhood development skills were. And I really wanted to find out when our core belief systems are formed. So that's when I'm embarking this journey to find out, okay, what is early childhood development skills? And during my research, besides the visible motor skills, I found out they were cognitive, language and communication, social and emotional, and went deeper into what it is, when are they formed, and how do they develop over time. Excuse me. And then during my research as well, I saw there was a direct link between the early childhood development skills and what we now call the 21st century skill, which is cognitive intrapersonal skills and interpersonal skills. So now what I do when I work with my different leaders and things like that, I kind of regress them back to understanding when were their belief systems formed, why do they behave and feel and think the way they do, especially during adversity, right? Because everybody could be a manager or leader when things are great. And you see the true manager leader appears when when they say the crap has hit the fan, right? And it's normally not pretty. So what I'm trying to do is go after the root cause level. Why are you behaving the way you are and thinking and feeling the way you are? And lo and behold, it has to do with your early childhood development or when your belief system formed, because 95% of what we do is based on our subconscious mind. And majority of that is formed during early childhood, specifically between 0 and 5 years old. So my quest for this book was, let's get parenting right and nurture the mindset, skill set, and behaviors during early childhood so we have this exemplary adults. Because if they don't do that, guess what? They're going to end up being my clients anyway, as a leader or a manager or people manager. So that's how I started.
Wow. And it's just amazing that to figure out what's happening now, you look back to childhood, and I don't think people get that connection, how deep that connection is, and how the way we are, as you say, hardwired, affects the rest of our lives, like how we perform throughout life.
Exactly. Because when we are born, we're born with a blank canvas, right? And when you see an adult behave and feel and think the way they do, you go back and think back, it's like, I wonder who was writing on your canvas. Was it mom, dad, grandfather, environment, the teacher, or somebody, a lack of a role model, or whatever, right? It's just like a computer. When the human beings are born, we have billions of cells waiting to be hooked up through neuroplasticity. And all they're doing is just observing the environment, the caregiver, the parents, whoever is during their formative age, or 0 to 5. because our brain grows up to 80% of our adult size by age 3 and 90% by 5 years old, right? That's pretty impactful. And neuroplasticity, the good thing is neuroplasticity still keeps going on after the age of 5, but trying to acquire this new knowledge, the rewiring process is a little bit more difficult, because science has shown us that for a behavior to eventually become a habit, you need to repeat that behavior at least 66 days on the average. For some of them, it takes sooner, others might take longer, right? So the whole concept of why I wrote this book, and also when I work with the leaders, is how can you be consciously responsible for your unconscious thoughts and behavior? What do I mean by that, right? Because if 95% of it's in the subconscious, we are relying on our lazy brain, right? Like driving from home to work, right? We don't think about it. We are there. While we're there, we're multitasking, thinking about multiple other things, right? But now, how can we be more conscious? Just increasing the 5% of conscious activity into 6%. Oh my God, what a performance booster it's going to be. Because at the average, we have between 60 to 75,000 thoughts a day. 60 to 75,000 thoughts a day. And 95% of this is from the repetition from the subconscious. And what's even harmful is, out of that 95%, 80% of them are negative emotions, right? One of my favorite authors and speakers, spiritual leaders, Wayne Dyer, passed away 2 or 3 years ago. He had this beautiful quote saying that a lot of people are guilty about the past or worried about the future, that they forget to live in the present. And he said the present is called a present because it's a gift, right? Part of being present is being conscious about how you talk to somebody, how do you behave, how do you help out somebody and things like that. We don't do that. We live in a society right now. It's me, and we're so busy. We're so quick to judge. Calm, pause, right? And that's basically why I wrote the book. As you can tell, I'm passionate about this. And we have I think 18 million children born every year in the US alone, I believe. And oh my God, can you imagine if because as a parent, you don't have an instruction manual. I tried, I'm a parent of three adults, right? Thankfully, I was nurtured the right way, whatever the right way is, with my loving parents and the extended family. Talking about the extended family, even the nuclear family has changed from how I was growing up, or 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, to what it is now. Because normally you have an extended family, grandparents living with you, uncles and aunts and things like that. You don't have that anymore. There's normally 2 parents, both of them working, or maybe even a single parent. And that has been detrimental, because I think as a parent, if you bring a child into this world, you're responsible for nurturing the mindset, skill set, and behavior. So my argument is, let's do parenting right, go full out. And simple strategies, like I said, right? When you're talking to a child, are you looking at him or her eyes, or are you looking at your smartphone and say, yeah, honey, you can do that, or whatever, right? Simple things. They're sponges. They're going to be looking at that. It's like, if you're not paying attention, if you're not role modeling, which is great, role model maker for this channel, right? If you're not role modeling, how could they be good role models, right? Because they're just observing. So yeah, that's why I wrote the book.
And they're observing and absorbing everything.
Exactly. And the good, you guess what? You put in good, good's going to come out. If it's bad, bad's going to come out. So that's important of how I tell people, right, new parents, do you know what's the best toy you can give your child? They're like, oh, what do you think? They're thinking about all these other different things about reading and math and things like that. I said, do you know that you are the best toy that you can give your child? Right? It's like, what do you mean? Right? Who is the primary caregiver? Who's the role model? And what's important is, when they read this book, to tell them what they need to do, they themselves improve. They say, oh my God, I've been treating my friend or my sibling or my spouse or whatever not the right way. So it's like a, double effect. Not only are they nurturing the mindset, skills, and behavior of the child, but also improving themselves as well. And it just happened that, I ended up writing the book to benefit parents and early childcare providers. Now I'm using that in my coaching practice when I'm leading with leaders, because it goes back to their childhood.
Wow. So you mentioned being present. So putting down that phone and being present as one of the most important things parents can do when they're interacting with their child, because they are, after all, their child's best toy. They don't have to go out and buy a toy. They are that toy. So, and the reason I'm bringing this up, because I've worked with parents who did not know how to play with their children because they weren't played with. And I had to teach them to play with their child. So for those parents, can you, like, is there something that you would lead them to help them in that?
Yeah, of course, a lot of it has to do with peer networking as well, peer groups, right? Because the wisdom is in the collective, right? Whether it's a play group or whatever you want to call it. And you'll pick and choose, and that's where you collaborate with them, you talk to them. Oh, you're doing that, I should do that as well. But simple things like talking to them, language alone has shown to be powerful. The number of words that you speak to the child has shown to been so powerful. And research again has shown that people in lower social economic condition that has fewer languages, are when they grow up, they're behind. That's not going to cost you. Just speak out loud, sing out loud when you're doing chores or feeding the child or going on a walk. And while you're observing nature, oh, that's a tree. What is this? That's a bird, all of that. Just think out loud. Don't worry about what others say while you're with your child, right? And also look at what gives you joy, right? When you were, go back to yourself when you were a little child, you know, unlimited curiosity, playfulness, right? All that. Make sure you bring your inner child out and be a child when you're with your child. You know?
Yes. And something that came to mind was the fact that children, babies, they love to hear their parents' voices. They don't have to have the best voice or whatever. It's very soothing for them, very comforting, and they enjoy hearing their parents' voices. So what you're saying just puts a big, like 3 exclamation points behind that, because, emphasizing the importance of language and hearing, the child hearing parents talk.
Yeah. And if they want one nugget and one nugget only from this interview, I would say you need to make sure that this child is safe, right? What do I mean by that? Make sure they are loved and safe. Hug them, say that you love them and things like that. Because as a human being, we are wired two ways and two ways only: fight, flight, or freeze, or to grow. When we're in fight, flight, or freeze, guess what? We are stressed out, right? And that's not good. When you're stressed out, you're shutting down the growth part. And that has helped us, humankind, throughout history, right? Our ancestors were running from the saber-tooth tiger or whatever, so the blood clots, right? The heart pumps and things like that. It's all good, so you can run away from danger. But can you imagine being in that state for an extended period of time? So there are a lot of children that are left alone or don't have that love, that they're stressed, and their growth portion is shut down. And growth is where creativity and everything else happens, right? Simple thing, hugging them, they will not get spoiled. Picking them up when they're crying, they will not get spoiled, right? Reasoning with them when they're sad, angry, mad, whatever it is, letting them know it's okay to be one of those, but let's figure out how do we cope with that, right? Just simple things. That's what I put in my book: simple strategy, bite-sized strategies that it can incorporate, right? Another example is when a child is struggling with some task, whether it's homework or whatever. One common thing the parent would say, try harder, right? But how am I to try harder if you haven't showed me how to do that, right? Simple things. It's more like common sense, but again, why isn't common sense common, right? So I took all this research and backed it up by science and put it down into bite-sized strategies so they can implement without even adding anything else while they're interacting with the child. I know even if the quantity is not there, let's make sure that the quality is 10x when you're with them after work or whatever, right? Nurture them, nurture them, nurture them, hug them, love them, and make sure they're not stressed out.
Yes, and actually what I learned recently, doing some trauma training, that what you just said is the key to nurture for resilient adults, adults who that can just so it can nullify the effects of trauma because children feel safe, right? That was one of the biggest takeaways for me. If a child feels safe, then a lot could happen in life, but it won't affect them as much if they have that love and security, they feel love and secure and safe.
I love that point because the argument here is let's nurture them with all these different skills, whether it's resiliency, empathetic, and all of these things, because we live in a crazy world out there, right? But if we were to nurture them with the correct anchors, would they deviate? They might, but at least they'll come back to the anchor because that's part of their DNA now. But if the DNA is not that strong, it was not nurtured correctly, guess what? They're going to deviate much easily. So that's what the argument is for. Nurture them early on.
Yes. So you're because I had this conversation with somebody recently about the ability to change somebody's DNA based on how you treat them. Is that what you're just saying, that it's possible to change DNA based on how, like you can, I guess rewire their DNA based on that?
That's essentially it, building new neural pathways, right? But you cannot start to build new neural pathways until you understand why you're wired the way you are, right? So that's why it's important to have therapists or coach or you have confidant, whatever you call it. Talk to someone who's trained in this so they can show you, okay, this is why you react this way you do. Even with trauma, when I was doing the research, I was so shocked to hear about the effects of generational trauma, like people who grew up in low socioeconomic conditions or Holocaust survivors and things like that. Because clients will come to me, it's like, oh, I had a great childhood, but why do you behave this way? Especially during adversity, right? Only to find out that, oh, my parents were going through this, or my grandparents went through that their DNA has been altered, and that's why they're so hyper vigilant, or scarcity mentality and things like that. But now that they understand that, the first thing to do is start with empathy, right? Forgive yourself, forgive whoever did what to you, forgive the circumstances. Now that you got to the good place, now you're ready for me to build new neural pathways as part of the rewiring process, because that doesn't define you, right? Your response to that is what defines you.
Wow. So you can actually change the foundation a little bit, is what I'm hearing. You can shift that foundation to one of, love and security and resilience by going back a little bit, like looking back at the childhood and changing, the mindset.
Exactly, because you cannot solve a problem with the same mindset that created it. You can try, right? But it's not going to be successful. It's like the definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, right? So you need to understand what that mindset was, what origin of that mindset was, whether it's in the subconscious or whatever, and how do you need to change that, right? Just like anything, even when you go into addiction, the first step is to admit I am an alcoholic, right? So understanding the root cause of why did I happen to be that way, what form, what was, the DNA or whatever. And then once you understand that, it's like, okay, forgive yourself. Start with empathy, because nobody is perfect. Life happens. Things happen to us. Forgive yourself. Again, live in the present. Don't be guilty about the past, right? Live in the present and make the necessary changes so you are successful.
Mhm. Wow, yes. And you've repeated it so many times, so I'm guessing the important thing here is to live in the present. Be here now, because so often we're thinking about, oh my goodness, what all the things of the past, and then we're focused on the future instead of being where we are and really, because there's nothing we can change from the past, or, there's not a whole lot we can affect in the future if we're not present, right?
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, you have to plan a little bit, but don't be obsessed with it, right? For the future. So just being more in control and see what's within your control and what's within your influence. Things that's not within your control, can you influence it? So it's at least it's a win-win, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes we get into, oh yeah, I got to control all this, so we become so obsessive, and that causes the stress. And talking about stress, if you look at all the major diseases, heart attack, cancer, diabetes, right? All of those four major diseases, the root cause of that is inflammation. And what causes inflammation? Stress. And it starts in childhood.
Right. Oh my goodness. You know, at a time when children can't control what's happening to them, and, which is critical, so so then we have to rewire because we were not hardwired, right? For
Yeah,
this, hardwired for growth. So now we've got to get rewired. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. And also, if you look at the job market and things like that, 5 years from now, almost over 80% of the jobs are not defined yet.
Mm.
So what do you teach the kids now, right? So part of the hardwiring process is, okay, regardless of what the jobs are going to be, what are some of the core skills that you need, right? And it starts with proper cognitive, social and emotional, language and communication, right? And an extension of that is critical thinking skills. What is that? Being conscientious. Now we have a global economy. How do you hone out on our intrapersonal skills? All of that, they all kind of fits nicely into it, right? Regardless of what job you're going to work with, you still have to work with human beings, at least for now, until AI takes over everything, right? But right now, you still have to work with humans. So they're all so interrelated. As you peel the onion, it's like, oh my God, why aren't we doing this? It's so easy, yet so difficult.
Yeah, so true. I remember meeting someone and they offered me a job, and they were like, and I said, well, I don't know anything about this position. And she said, but you have the right attitude and we can train you. And I thought, oh, and you just spoke to that when you said what you just said, just sharing those skills that we need, those 21st century skills, because they will speak louder than anything. Because if you're trainable, if you're cognitively flexible, you can be taught to do
Yep,
whatever job.
exactly. And if your core skills or core values are strong, right, and healthy, I can train you in all the other technical skills. But if your
Mhm.
core values is not good, I can't untrain that. That's part of your DNA. Right.
Yes.
So the technical skills I can give you. So let's get the core values right. Whether you call it core values, soft skills, language and communication, social and emotional, cognitive, or whatever. Get that right. And then all these other things you can acquire. And again, talking about acquiring AI, to me, I love AI. Don't be afraid of that. So when you look at technology, you can either be a master to the technology or a slave to the technology. A lot of people end up being the slave. It's like, no, see how now that AI can do all this thing faster, all right, how can you use this information and propel yourself even further? Right? It's
Yeah,
how you view it, right?
right. Yes, because you can save more time using AI. So why not? You can free your time to do other things that you enjoy by embracing AI instead of being afraid of it and thinking, oh my goodness, it's going to take my job. Then it probably will.
Exactly. Just even the medical profession, right? They can kind of crunch down the diagnosis part and truly listen to the patient and find out, okay, what's going on in the environment? What does your stress level look like? what's going on at work, what's going on in personal life. Yeah, the medical record shows all this, and AI has already come back together and tell me these are probably some of the reasons, but there are a whole slew of the other things that are impacting you called epigenetics, which is the environment. So every profession can even get better, but you need to know how to use the technology rather than being afraid of it and being a slave to it.
Yes,
When I say
yes.
being a slave to it is being lazy, right? I mentor some college students, and it's like resume writing or cover letter. Don't just go to AI, Chat GPT, and then have them do it for you. Chat GPT and things like that will get you there maybe 60 to 80% there. Now that you know what it's showing you, okay, put it in your own voice. Now that you know how to do that, great. Improvise, 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 right? As opposed to doing it over and over again with yourself. What AI has done is got all the best practices. Hey, these are some of the best, right? Oh, okay. Now I know what best looks like. I can emulate that, right? Rather than just doing a lift and shift, right? Lifting what AI gives you and then implementing it. That's when you're being a slave.
Yeah, and I've heard that there are people who've gotten into trouble using just AI and not really taking that information and really looking at it critically, because everything on there is not necessarily the truth. It's not necessarily correct. Like you have to, make sure the research that they used is supported and all of that, instead of just regurgitating, like you said, just shifting it to wherever. It's really important to look a little deeper into that and make sure that the information that you're receiving is sound.
Exactly. Exactly.
Wow. Wonderful. Now, Dr. Ravi, what would you want people to leave this moment with? What is like one thing, if you were to emphasize that you just can't shout from the rooftops enough, what would that be?
Play full out as a parent, right? Be present, sounding like a broken record. Be present for your child, right? Love them, love them, love them. Feel them, make them feel saved. And the other thing I would say is 10x their curiosity. Make sure they are constantly curious. Don't shut them down when they ask why. Encourage that. Most of the time we say, well, it's because I said so, or we don't have the energy to explain to them. And even if you don't know the answer, it's like, you know what? Mommy or daddy don't know it. Let's figure it out together, right? 10x their curiosity. So if you ask me three things, play full out, right? Love them to death, and 10x their curiosity.
Nice, nice. And I love that because, so often we hear, because I said so, and that's not an answer. Then our child starts, they will adopt that, and that's not getting them anywhere. So I love that they can research together to find that answer instead of, just making up something or just brushing them off, because then that prevents them, they'll stop being curious and stop learning instead of learning to learn. Yes?
Yeah. And that exercise also shows them how to be vulnerable. You don't know everything, but let's figure it out. How do we figure it out? How do we ask the right question? Because as I work with leaders, I tell them one of their strong traits as a good leader is being vulnerable, right? And emotional intelligence and all that good stuff, whatever you want to call it. So you're teaching them all these different things that eventually gets translated into what they call in corporate speak or whatever, right?
Awesome. Awesome. Oh my goodness. This has been an amazing time. Thank you so much, Dr. Ravi, for taking the time to come and share with us to help empower parents and just give them some real tools that they can use to help their child so that they can parent with confidence.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I hope they got something out of it.
Oh my, I got a lot out of it, so I'm sure other people did as well. Our audience loved it, I'm sure.
Awesome.
Okay, thank you, sir.
And if they want more information, they can go to my website. It's like www.drraviratnam.com, or I'm everywhere, and LinkedIn and things like that. So you can look me up.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.